Okay, so we've got Adrian Corkill, Claire, who's our marine assistant. She's also our artist in residence, so she'll probably draw you if you sit still. Lara is Dr. Lara Howe, who's our marine officer, and Pauline, keen diver from one of the dive club. Nice lady. So there's 4 coming in now. Hello, hello, everyone. I know we're expecting a few more. I don't know. I'll tell you what we will do, because I think everyone else that's going to join the call, you'll know. So I'm going to suggest that you all just, because we ain't going to have 50 on this call, so do you want to just introduce yourselves to John, and then John will wait till we'll give 5 minutes before you introduce yourself, and then hopefully a few more will be here. But I'm going to pick on people on the screen clockwise, and no surprise, I'm going to start with Lara. She can't hear me, or she'd have swore at that point, so she must be fixing a computer. So I'm going to start with Claire. Claire, do you want to introduce yourself to John, please?
So John, my name is Claire. I am the Marine Conservation Assistant and also the artist in residence and compiler of the Day Nature.
In terms of diving, Claire, you've been a diver for a few years, yeah?
Yes, I completed my training when I was 19, which is a few more years than I care to admit. And I am probably one of the least qualified on here. I'm advanced open water.
Thank you. Right, I'm going around the screen. Pauline, hiya.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Yeah, just say hello to John and tell him who you are.
Hi, I'm Pauline. I'm a member of the Sub-Aqua Club. Been diving for many years. Dived the racehorse a number of times.
Fab.
Yep.
Lara, can you hear us yet? No. So everyone can swear at Lara. No problem. Poor Lara. Adrian, hello. Thanks for joining us.
No problem.
I'll let you introduce yourself to John, please.
I used to be a diver many years ago. I was a diver concentrate on shipwrecks, basically. So also I've compiled a database of shipwrecks around the Isle of Man over the last 30 years or so. And I'm now up to just not quite 2,000 shipwrecks going back the last 100 years. So I'm going to soon create, with the help of Manchester National Heritage, the local historic environmental record for the Irish Sea around the Isle of Man, because I don't have one.
Great, thank you.
Michelle and Steve, I'm not sure if that's one or both of you, but do you want to say hello? I think you've met John before, but maybe not. I don't know if they can hear us, or whether there might be a room of 30 at Discover Diving. You never know. Lara, can you hear us yet? I'm going to have one more go with Lara. I'm going to send her a chat line.
She says she's having some sound issues.
She might have to listen to the recording. Just check my WhatsApp. Lara, can you hear us?
We can't hear you now. I think you can hear us.
You can hear us?
How could you sign language?
Well, I'll introduce you. So Lara's a right pain to me. She gives me all sorts of trouble. And everything in that. No, Lara, Dr. Lara Howe is our marine officer at the Wildlife Trust. Is also the sea search coordinator for the Isle of Man. Has lots of dive quals and can't speak, which is blissful. Oh, Michelle, you're on. Hiya. I know you've known John, don't you? Do you want to say it? Like, is your other half with us?
He's just having a first aid issue. He'll be along.
Okay. Hiya.
All the
That's very
digits
well
are still
downplayed.
attached. They're just not quite as well attached as they were.
Oh, ow, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now, everybody?
Yay!
I'll mute
What-
myself now.
So go on. What did you not? What haven't I said about you that you want to say to John?
No, that's about accurate. I'm a pain in your backside. Yeah, that's about right.
I'd have it no other way. Michelle, do you want to say hello? I think you have dived with John years ago. I think was it probably a porcupine gig? Was it, John?
No, it's a Bernard thing, but you probably don't remember. It was like 3 or 4 years ago. So
You're mute. Yeah.
I remember most people, to be fair. Yes, I do remember you. It's strange the number of people that have stayed in my attic.
yeah, I didn't stay with you, but we went out and we were doing scallop surveys and looking for sea slugs and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I remember it was the trip I got a complete bollocking on because on the last day I put you on Ports and Mary Ledges and everyone went, "This is the most fantastic site ever." And that's
I
not
was
how.
going to say if we could do that again, that would be amazing. It was,
Yeah, no, I thought you probably would like to if it was possible.
yeah. Yeah, that would be lovely.
Interestingly, we dived that on Sunday with Discover Dive, and it was a fantastic dive. I came away thinking the same. What anyway? Right, John. This isn't about. We've introduced, so I'm going to hand over to you now, John, for a bit of an intro, and then I think you might steer us through, and people can have a chance to. Please, everyone, if you've got questions, the aim of this is a bit of a soft intro for John's visit in April. So please do stick your hand up digitally if you can. Mute yourself if you're not speaking, then we'll keep John's focus. I'll lead the way. John, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Lee. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us on, I don't know what the weather's like on your end, but we've had like sleet and snow today, which is a bit like, I don't know about that. Yeah, so I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Essex and my in artificial intelligence. And I do all sorts of things. So I analyze social media data, I get involved in citizen science projects, I get involved in search engine stuff and web development, all kinds of things. But the thing I actually enjoy doing is working in marine conservation and marine surveying. And so kind of one of the strands of research that I do involves building 3D models of marine environments. And it started off in 2014, I think it was, or maybe it was 2017. We built a multi-camera array, basically, that we could swim around with, take loads of pictures and build 3D models with. And then basically the research directions have blossomed in all directions. But in particular in the UK, it's been quite interesting because the UK is quite a challenging environment to try and survey because it's cold and there's not much light. And often the visibility is quite poor. And the techniques that we use, I'll sort of show to you, can get around those issues quite well. And you can build things in a 3D model that you can't actually see underwater. You can just kind of see it's right up against your face and you shine a torch at it. You can build the whole model without actually being able to see all of it at once. So there's some really interesting things going on. And I guess today what I wanted to do is just kind of give you a bit of a summary as to the work that we've been doing and you know, maybe give you a bit of a clue as to the capabilities of it, I think. And as Lee says, just do interrupt me. I may skip over bits. If bits interest you that I've just skipped over, then ask me to explain it. I don't want it to be like a 2-hour lecture like I give my students on a regular basis because they bore you to tears. So I've got some slides and they're focused a little bit more on, let me just share my screen. You see that? Yeah, okay. So they're focused on really about sort of studying marine life rather than doing wreck surveying. And there is a big sort of stream of work of people doing wreck surveying. But it's the same principle, it's the same stuff that we do. If my internet goes a bit funny, by the way, do let me know, because I'm streaming my video and the video from the thing, and they'll go probably wrong. This is a double chamber parlour pot that's used off Norfolk that you're seeing the 3D model of. And we got involved in some work with Natural England because the potting was shown to be damaging the chalk beds. And you can see the chalk beds, these bright white areas here, where the pots just kind of rub and scrape and bash against them. So this is quite a big body of work that we did in 2019. And we use these multi-camera arrays to really rapidly survey the marine environment. And that pot is about 1 meter long by 60 centimeters wide, by 60 centimeters high, that sort of thing. So you can see the kind of level of detail that you can get, not just in the texture and the topography, but also in the visual as well. So you can see crabs and lobsters in that pot. You can see the wire mesh and that kind of stuff. It's very highly detailed. And I don't really take any credit for that because it's software that you use, and you put the images in there and it does it all for you. And this is the kind of stuff that I'd like to, if you're interested, I can show you how all that works when I come over. Here's a technical bit. So what is a three-dimensional model? So a 3D model is actually a series of polygons or triangles, and you put them together, and that's what we call a mesh, and then you color them in. And the colors come from the photos that you take. So in this, what you see here is the mesh. And you can build that. You build the mesh by making lots of dots in three-dimensional space. And that's what you see here, is this picture of this church. It's not actually a photograph or a mesh, it's actually dots in three-dimensional space. And that's what you're seeing. And the dots just colored based on whatever the software is telling it to be. And you get the position of those dots is determined by taking lots of pictures of something from lots of different angles. And that's something called structure from motion. This is the last technical slide, by the way, so keep it light and fluffy. So you can see these little kind of funny cone-shaped objects. These are where the camera has taken a picture, right, of this church. And you can see we've gone all the way around the base of the church, and then there's some high up ones we did with a drone. And that's how you get that picture of something. And what it's called structure from motion. And so it's the camera is moving. That's the motion bit. And the motion of the camera allows you to build structure. And it's the same process as your eyes. You can judge depth because you've got two cameras effectively looking outwards, and you can judge like how far things are away based on how things operate in your eyes. Whew, okay, no more technical stuff, but that's just a little kind of introduction into some of the words and terminology that we might use. We talk about 3D, building 3D models. The process is called photogrammetry. You may have heard of that before. There are a number of techniques for photogrammetry. Structure from motion is the one that we use mostly for building 3D models. From that, we can do some interesting stuff. So we can build very accurate representations of the marine environment, and we can also analyze them. So I don't know if any of you have done rugosity analysis, but that's where you measure the kind of the bumpiness of a reef, let's say. And you can do that very accurately with a 3D model because you can just slice it up and then computationally calculate what's going on. And we can also do 3D printing. So once we have a 3D model of something, we can then print it using plastic or a number of different materials. So in terms of engaging with people, whether it be through the Wildlife Trust or divers or whatever it is, you can make some really, quite exciting visualizations, videos, physical models, all sorts of stuff you can do. This is a 3D model of a coral reef, and if I just bear with me. So these 3D models are all on Sketchpad, they're online. So you can see that I can move this one around. it's a 2 meter square quadrat. And we use this for habitat surveying in the tropics. And you can see the level of, the detail that you're getting on the, it's almost down to polyp level on some of these sort of boulder corals, brain corals. You're getting very good level of detail. And that takes maybe about 1 minute of camera time of how you swim across that particular environment to capture that level of data.
John, I'm going to throw a leaning question in because I've asked you this before.
Yeah.
What, and Steve's joining us, I'll let Steve in. How does this work in our environment where you'd get lots of algae? How does it work around algae with photogrammetry?
Yeah, it's so anything that moves tends to either mess up the model or gets ignored by the software. So if you had a diver or a fish swimming across the scene, it would be ignored typically. Yeah, so measuring seaweed and algae is a real pain for photogrammetry for this process, yeah, for sure. Kelp is a different kind of kettlefish. I've never done any work in kelp park or kelp beds, but I would imagine you'd have that fairly stable. The stipe would probably build, but the top definitely wouldn't, because it'd just be flapping away. And you'd need to get underneath all of that stuff as well. So, yeah, algae is not good, shall we say? So the method for creating that 3D model is to move the camera systematically over that area and get about 60% coverage overlap between the images. These blue squares are each image that was taken of that particular area. And you just move backwards and forwards and then crisscross that. So it's called a lawnmower pattern. So you get very good overlap and coverage, and that's what builds. You put the pictures into the software, and that's what builds the model. I'll skip over that bit because I'll show you that when I'm actually on site when I come. And I'll just skip over that bit as well. So this is a sea search diver. Some of you may be familiar. And I do a lot of diving with sea search in Norfolk and nationally as well, but my sort of local patch really is in Norfolk on the Chalk Reef. And last year when we could go outside, we tried to collect some small models to support the habitat descriptions. So I'm a sea search surveyor. So we collect maybe 3-4 habitat types per dive and list all the species. And so to go with habitats, we would just do a quick 2-minute video we'd build into models. And we tried that. That was pretty straightforward to do. But for those of you that know anything about sea search, there's kind of no systems in place to accept that information. So I processed it, I put it on my website, and I put the link on the form, and that's basically all we can do. I mean, we can't even give sea search images very easily, or put into Marine Recorder very easily. So putting in 3.
John,
Yeah.
I'll come in again because I've had this conversation with Charlotte Bolton as well as yourself, and I think there's an ambition, isn't there, to try and evolve this. So there's, although you've tried this on the East Coast, it's not a proven methodology for sea search in other areas. So we hope this might be something we could test here with small areas of the seabed. Yeah.
And just because we can't give the data to sea search or they have no way of consuming it, doesn't mean we can't collect it and process it and have it available. I guess in the same way, before sharing images was so easy now, but back in the days of film cameras, obviously everyone had their own collections, but now those images are really useful. So it could be that, in 5-10 years time, having 3D models of the marine environment before whatever impacts happened will become very useful. So yeah, it's a technology that's not been accepted into the sea search data pipeline yet, but but we are experimenting and sort of trying different things. This is a 3D model of an area of one of the habitats on the Chalk Reef. So that sort of area, it's not the White Cliffs of Dover, that's actually my dive knife, which is about 15 centimeters long. Okay, so so the little cliff there is not very tall. But you can, again, you can see the level of detail. You can actually, Lee, you can see there's some algae down on the sort of right hand side in the middle, some red. I'm not even going to guess what algae that is. You're getting a little bit of detail on the algae because they're little tufts, not too bad. But doing it in UK waters, as I mentioned before, it can be quite tricky. So you probably need to have lights. There's a lot of turbidity and sand and dust and all sorts of stuff in the waters off Norfolk that can make it difficult to do surveying, as well as kind of floating algae and plankton blooms and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, it can be challenging, but it's not impossible, I think is the answer. And through experience and doing lots of sort of practice, lots of different environments, you get a feeling of how best to approach a new environment. And that's what we'll do when I come down for the week, is that we'll probably, the first couple of tries that we do that probably won't work, and we'll need to adjust the method to get the best data capture. This is the, I mentioned this camera frame thing. This is basically what it is. It's plumbing pipe and cable ties, as all of the best things are made of. It's got this one's got 6 GoPros on, but so it's basically a bunch of GoPros in a circle. And you just carry that and you just sort of push it along and you set it to recording in video mode. We fitted it onto sea scooters. That was a laugh. We've also got an ROV that we can fit it onto, and we can survey a bit deeper as well and go down to 60 meters with that. So yeah, lots of different adaptations, but essentially what we do is we just carry it with divers. It's a lot easier. You can get the right position on the seabed and that kind of stuff. So it's something, you know, you can do the scanning with a single camera, and it doesn't need to be a GoPro. It can be any camera with video mode, or you will also have this gear as well to do the surveying. And it's something that anyone can do. You just need to kind of hold the thing and swim along. So as long as you can maintain buoyancy, it's very straightforward to do. So a little bit of intro about the technology. This is just thought to finish a couple of rec models that I've done. So as I say, I don't really do recs. It's going to be quite exciting to focus on recs when I come over. But this is the bow section of the SS Rosalie. So that's about 20 meters by 40 meters model. And this was captured with a single camera, just going backwards and forwards and then crossing over. Took about 10 minutes to take that footage. Didn't use any video lights on that one because it was about 10 meters deep, so there's enough natural light. You can see on the bowsprit plumose anemones, and there's sort of rusting. You can see the cobbles underneath, how the fins of the hull have collapsed and sort of started storing cobbles, that kind of stuff. You're getting resolution to about, I don't know, maybe, you know, you'll be able to pick things up that are about 1 centimeter wide, maybe a little bit more. So you're getting, you know, reasonable resolution from sort of cheap cameras doing quick surveying. And you can get much higher resolution, but that's going to be more expensive and take more time. The other one that I surveyed, and I'll actually, I'll pick up the 3D model of this in a second, is the wreck of the MS Menina in Orkney, which basically crashed into one of these rocks that stick out of the sea, and all the wreckage kind of fell into a gully. And you can see here, I don't know what any of these things are, but there's some kind of hog thing here. I mean, Adrian probably knows what this is. Some kind of thing there, and another kind of wheel thing there. I don't know what it's all. But yeah, if I just try and switch my screen share to this model, just bear with me a second. Can you? Yeah, you should be able to see that now. So this is the 3D model, and you can see here on the right hand side you've got a gully wall with plumose anemones on. And then you've got the kind of wreckage type stuff. So do shout out, Adrian, if any of this looks like anything to you. Maybe that was like the anchor sort of capstan type thing. Maybe, don't know. And there's a kind of a wheel thing here. again, I've no idea what that could have been used for.
John, with that, that's not dissimilar to what we're probably going to be doing around the racehorse site. And if we got any lumps of, you know, a cannonade or a cannonball, it would be interesting, but there might be lots of seabed without. So that sort of topography with gullies and probably some algae. So how long did that bit there take to create? What is the time that's gone into that bit we're looking at now?
So this was probably about 12, 15 minutes with me with a single GoPro.
Wow.
With the multiple cameras, I reckon you could do this in 5 minutes. So it's much more efficient with multiple cameras. How
much training do we need in terms of how we do that with cameras in terms of a protocol of speed and distance of passes? Is there a relatively straightforward methodology that you can say, you know, roughly swim at this, so far off the seabed, this sort of speed, this distance between your passes? That methodology is all proven, yeah?
Yeah, it's all kind of depending on you know, how much kelp there is, what the visibility is like, what the natural light is like, what the currents are like, you know, all these kind of things. But generally speaking, you try and swim about a meter or so off the seabed. This was in a gully, so you needed to capture the sides as well as the bottom, all this kind of stuff. But yeah, it's a question of like looking at the topography and you know, figuring out a plan of how to survey it. The software is quite forgiving. As long as you go quite slowly and you make sure there's plenty of overlap, it can be quite forgiving. And I think realistically, with, you know, maybe half an hour training or half an hour chat beforehand, anyone should be able to, you know, capture something like this.
May
maybe,
I ask?
Sorry, go on.
Sorry to interrupt. So you mentioned about the 60% overlap. In theory, if we had, say, you know, for argument's sake, 4 different divers all capturing the same site, but possibly not overlapping as 4 squares, provided there is a 60% overlap at the point where the 2 records meet, would the software still be able to interpret that? It
would, yeah. Well,
wow.
I say confidently, it should. I think might be a better thing. Yeah, it should do. Yeah. It's the same approach, effectively the same approach as using a frame with lots of cameras on. You're using lots of people with a single camera. So yeah, and it might be that you put down markers on the seabed, and you say this is your westerly end. Go and swim around that bit, and then go to another marker over there, so people know how far they need to capture. And yeah, and you could build quite big models that way. I mean, it's worth bearing in mind that the processing power of models, it goes up exponentially. So the more, if you add one more picture, when you get very large models, it's very processing intensive. But Lee was telling me all about your expensive new computers, so I'm sure we'll give them a good test when I come down. This is the 3D model of the Rosalie, and you can see that, you know, these gaps. This is on a flat seabed. Again, you can see it's picking out the gaps in the hull and the detail you're getting. This model took a little bit of cleaning, so there's a bit of post-processing to do on that one. And again, I could show you how you go about doing that as well. I think in terms of, you know, monitoring wrecks, you know, if you have this kind of data available to you, take a 3D model of a wreck, and then over the years you can keep an eye on it and see, you know, if bits go missing, bits fall off, how it's you know, gradually eroding. Even if you don't do anything with the data at the point of collection, you know, in 5 years' time, you might find having this data is really valuable to go back to. So you don't have this kind of, I wonder what the wreck looked like in 2018. You know, you would have that data. And it's the same approach that we take with reefs as well, is that, you know, having this data is better than not having it. So that was really all I wanted to kind of show you. I didn't want to kind of drag on about it. I think when I come down, I'll give some sort of hands-on training about how we actually collect the data, how we process the data. And I don't think there's any point in me really showing you that kind of stuff tonight. But I guess really more to talk about, you know, well, answer any questions, but also how we might go about doing surveying when we're down. What kind of goals do you have? What do you hope to get out of it?
Thanks, John. Do you want to stop sharing your screen and we'll get everyone galleryed again? I'm going to throw it open for questions first before I bombard him with my own. Go on, Claire.
You mentioned about seaweed. It's not very it's not particularly good for capturing seaweed because it's moving. The implications of being able to use this software for the plant life, you know, specifically things like seagrass, as that's shorter and less motile than some of the bigger seaweed species, do you think it would be possible, having seen the resolution of the you know, the chalk bed and things, be able to identify things like seagrass?
I think it depends on how dense the seagrass is. If it's quite sparse, you'll probably see a kind of a little green stub. So you might be able to get an assessment from that. Hence, I don't think the model would even build, because you'll just have a big swoosh of green and it'll always be changing. There'll be nothing that's fixed in any of the frames that the model will be able to build on. And that's certainly been the case with in Norfolk, where it's been like solid horn rack or something like that, bladder rack, sorry. The model just can't do anything with it and it just breaks. But where it's sparse, I think, you know, something like up to 70%, 60-70% coverage of seaweed is okay. But more than that, and it gets problematic because the model doesn't have a fixed point to reference from.
Right. But potentially, even if we were able to identify an area that couldn't be mapped because it was too mobile, that would still give us an indication of possible seagrass coverage, I suppose, if we had a comparison of a solid substrate next to it, for example.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. I don't know if there are seabeds of that sort of level of coverage in the UK though, so it may be a problem we don't have, unfortunately.
Yeah, my take on that is that it's not at all for mobile bottoms, it's for fixed rigid stuff. And actually one of the advantages is that if it's moving, it typically doesn't get in the model, John, although you know, so it's not clear, it's likely that the model just cuts it out.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Well, not necessarily a question, but more just a comment, really. If we could find somewhere that bit of seabed that we know has been dredged recently, it'd be really good to show the track patterns through the seabed from the dredging. That would be really cool. Might be a conversation with DEFA to get some VMS data so we could find somewhere that we know has been dredged fairly recently. Might be quite an interesting one to show.
Yeah, definitely. For those kind of sort of comparative sort of seabed type stuff, that's where we would typically lay out a quadrat of maybe 2 meters squared, that kind of thing, and just build the 2 meter models and just do sort of random sampling of areas we know that are impacted and areas we know that haven't been impacted, and then we can do species counts, complexity measurements, sort of rugosity measurements, that kind of stuff on those different quadrats. Just kind of depends on what you want to do with it, but that's how we've done it in the past. Yeah.
You asked Steve what our aims of the week were, so go on, I'll kick on this. So we have we want to get upskilled, so we've got half a chance of doing photogrammetry after you've gone. So we hope we've got the right kit and the software and people with cameras who are keen to do it, and 2 or 3 who literally couldn't join us tonight. So we think we've got a nucleus of divers who want to do it, and we're very keen that we just share that. So we want to learn first and foremost. Then of course there's the M&H project, which was the hook in the first place around the racehorse. But we may not find anything there. There's no ambition to find anything. There's a huge ambition to find anything, but we might not. but probably our best chance is some of the ballast stones and maybe some of the old cannonballs if we can find the rocks that they're sat on. And we think with Brian King, the guy that did all the diving in the 80s, we've probably got the best chance and little bits of finding stuff. So we'd like to do that. But even if we just got maps of the seabed, M&H are enthused by having that we could have, you know, it's similar to the gully map, the gully 3D image. If we had some map around the gullies of where the racehorse was, they'd still be interested to show that. Either in a museum on a screen or online on a screen as part of the story of the 200th anniversary. So they're keen to do that. And then we think that there are some other wreck sites around the Isle of Man that we could do while you're here as almost a definite. We'd thought about one called the Citrine, which is quite shallow, so we could probably do nice long dives on that and get it all buttoned up in one dive maybe. Steve, who's just disappeared off screen, and mentioned a wreck he's keen to get map called the Thracian. Steve, I don't know if you want to talk about the Thracian, but there's other wrecks that we might do, so that if we, you know, in short, we get skilled. You teach us a bit about how to do it. We have a good go at trying to find something around the racehorse, or at least the racehorse site, and then we do one or two other wrecks and get some result of rusty steel on the Isle of Man by the end of the week.
Yeah, I think you were saying Citrine was quite a small wreck. You say it was about 20 meters long. Is that right, or less?
Spread more than that. Steve and Michelle, or others will tell me exactly. I'm going to bring Scowley in the conversation. Steve, do you want to? How big's the Citrine, Steve?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's
Some strange echoes going on.
You sound like a Cylon. You'll know what I mean.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
It's probably spread out over sort of 30-ish meters, something like that. Maybe
Okay.
40. But the Liverpool would be, not the Liverpool, the Thracian probably be quite a good one. In that you could do it in one pass, probably. Or one circumnavigation.
Yeah, you've appeared now.
Yeah.
The Don Bosco would be nice.
Don Bosco, that's a nice small target.
And it's deeper, so it's away from the weed, because the issue you might have with citrine is you'll be starting to get weed growth on it now. That might affect how well you can do on it.
What about the Polaris? I know it's a bit deeper, but that might be an interesting one.
Yeah, the Polaris, yeah, it probably would. It may actually be a really nice thing to do is build, you know, a model of that.
No, the stern of the Liverpool, Lara, that's where we need to go before it collapses. That's got to be the iconic one to get, hasn't it?
Yeah, that one as well. It's going to be a very long list, John.
But the
All right, I'll change my booking. I'll stay for 2 weeks then, Sean.
the trouble with the Polaris is there's not a huge tidal window on it because of where it is. Whereas the Thracian and the Don Bosco, you can dive them pretty much any state of the tide.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, for this first, you know, I will come back. You know, we don't have to do everything, you know, at once.
Well,
let's pick some kind of easy targets to start with, and I can show you how the technique you can kind of take it forward, and then, you know, I'll be back at some point and we can target some of the trickier ones.
yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah, sounds great.
It looks like, and we'd have to, I haven't scrutinized the tide tables, but it looks like we might be able to do a dive in the morning and then the second dive on the racehorse site in the afternoon. So fitting in with some of the deeper wrecks in the morning could work quite well. But I don't know how you'd want to start, John. How you'd want to, like, you know, first dive on the Tuesday in a perfect world. What's does it need to be?
I think we should do loads on the Monday, Lee.
He's not coming till the Monday. John, you're coming on the ferry on Monday. Are you now?
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
I wanted you not to be there.
I know. but I want you there, you see.
Well, the tide's on the Tuesday. Yeah, we've got higher at 20 to 2. but they're massive tides as well. Obviously, because it's Easter.
Springs.
Yeah, so in effect, we can do a dive in the morning, then the racehorse later in the afternoon.
Yeah.
When is the slack? Is it on high water? Or is it...
Slack. Yeah. About an hour after high, it's dive.
Down to low water.
Yeah. Theoretically, according to Mora, God rest her, 3 hours before low, down low was like the sweet spot for it.
Right.
I find on that end of Ness there, anything sort of an hour after high, it is perfectly workable.
And is the racehorse, I mean, it's quite a, I mean, it's in amongst the rocks in it. So,
well, last time I dived the racehorse, I found a spring off a car. Yeah, coil.
Lots of gullies.
Yeah, I think all the cannonballs are in divers' garages.
And the cannonballs are at a plateau at about 6 meters.
Yeah, I think there's more of that wreck, but it's deeper off the edge, you know, off the drop off.
when you say deeper, Steve, how deep do you mean? Like 30 meters?
It drops, yeah, it drops quite quick. Yeah, it drops down to about 30 max off the ends where the scour is. But yeah, probably about 20 meters. I'm pretty sure there's still bits of it there. We found 4 foot long copper pins and God knows what. And we left them there, obviously, Lee.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things we could do is, I mean, I think surveying the gully where most of that dig in the 80s happened, most of the wreckage was found would be quite good. But I think beyond that, we could just go in buddy pairs and take a camera with a light on. And if you find something interesting, you just take a scan of the area and then come back and see what we got. So instead of bringing the copper pin back, we just bring back the picture of the seabed.
Yeah.
Where it is. I guess, we'd need quite a good map of the site so we could map where all of these 3D models we're going to build, where they've all come from. I mean, that could be quite a good use of time if people were up for exploring a bit. And it doesn't take long to make the model to collect the footage. It takes maybe like 1 or 2 minutes. So if people are on air or nitrox or down quite deep, it's not prohibitive.
No, it's a nice site to dive anyway, to be honest. Wreck or no wreck. And certainly the scranes themselves, the rocks, it'd be quite nice to have a sort of model of that area anyway.
Mm.
I don't know what others think. Pauline, I might get your view, but anyone chip in. We did go what we're calling Brian's Mark. We went out at sort of a half tide and some of the rocks appeared above water, and Brian, the guy that did it, sort of positioned us and said here. And then we've done a dive on it afterwards, and we found a dead eye that could have come from there and bits of pottery. So we can't be a million miles away. But I wonder whether if we actually took Brian out at a low tide, a low spring tide, where he could see lots of the scranes above the surface, whether he might have even a better chance at pinpointing that plateau that Pauline just talked about. I don't, because the topography then, a lot of it will be above the water, and Brian's detailed paper maps from the 80s that I've shared with you, John, yeah. we might be able to put that far more accurately on where Brian was getting the stuff from. I don't know if anyone's got any thoughts on that.
Oh, can I just cover a quick point? This is Adrian.
Yeah.
Alison was telling me that she's had somebody, a pottery expert, look at some of the finds from the racehorse, and some of them are actually too old to be the racehorse. It's not the only wreck necessarily on the screens, so that's an important point. It's not to assume that there is necessarily the racehorse.
There's that slate wreck there as well in Dreswick Heart. Well, just on Dreswick Point, it's as well, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's just piles of slates there.
But they reckon the pottery was from the mid 18th century. So, a good sort of 70, 80 years before the racehorse.
An old pot they were carrying around.
Yeah. Adrian, did you dive any of that with Brian? I know you wrote the Bible on the wrecks of the island, but did you do any of the diving on the racehorse?
I've never dived on the racehorse. No,
It was too shallow for Adrian.
The other one that might have information about the racehorse is Tony Heaton. He was the one that started me diving on it years ago.
Have we got Tony's contact details? Do we know where he's
Yeah,
from?
yeah, I could probably contact him. Mm.
So I guess I'm trying, John, to imagine the first morning when we're all there enthused, and even, well, first morning, you know, where do we go if we're not going to the racehorse on the first morning and we do a briefing? I don't know whether, depending on whether we just pick a shallower wreck site, maybe the Citrine if we can get in and go and do that. Thoughts from others?
Yeah.
which boat are you using? Steve's boat.
Well, we've got both club ribs, and
Yes.
Steve, you talked about the hard boat, but I mean, we're geared up to use the ribs. Anything beyond that's a bonus in my eyes. But I suspect we'd all get on a boat. We'd certainly get on 2 ribs or the hard boat, or whether we need to take a combination. But we've got both club ribs ready to go when we need them.
Sensibly, your option for dive planning is to look at it either on the Sunday night or the Monday night when you've got an up-to-date forecast and that you can see where things are going. The tides are so big that weekend that even a slightest amount of wind on it is going to give you some issues. So I think until you know the weather closer to, it'll be hard to pick a site at this point. What you could do is say, right, let's go for a 9 o'clock meeting on Tuesday morning and everyone gassed up and ready to dive.
Sounds good. John, you happy with that? And we'll just be flexible as we go?
Yeah, yeah, it sounds good. I think from the perspective of the racehorse, it'd probably be good to dive it once before we try and map that the gully bit, if we can find that gully bit, just to orientate ourselves on the site, maybe drop a marker on it or something. Unless people are very sure about where we're going to be dropped and what we're going to find there. But
no, well, Pauline, you're probably the best one in this conversation. I don't think we are sure, are we? We've
not 100%, but I think more or less sure, but not 100%.
The best idea we've got is what we call Brian's mark, but as I say, there was 1 or 2 rocks out of the water. It wasn't that precise. And that's why I sensed that if we got him there on a lower tide, especially a low spring, he would orientate himself, because there'd be a lot of the topography above the surface then. It might be worth, depending on weather, that first morning, depending on what time. Have you got your tide tables there? What time's low tide on that Tuesday?
Hang on. Tides. Yeah, lows at 20 past 8.
Yeah, it might even be worth. I'd be happy
You
to
can't
go.
launch the boats on a very low tide. You won't be able to launch the ribs.
Look, if we could get Brian King on a boat on a river at 8 in the morning to nip out there and get
The
into
size of those tides, Lee.
You can't launch your ribs on that low water. On
Do
this
not,
tides,
no?
you'll run out of slipway. You can go and launch them about 6 o'clock in the morning, leave them floating,
Okay.
but you won't be able to launch them at low.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay.
You'll be off the end of the slip at the height of that tide.
Well, it might be worth. You see my logic though about getting Brian King on that site when he can see a lot of the topography. He might be able to pinpoint us far more accurately where that gully was.
But perhaps before the Tuesday,
The night
you
before.
can put a mark on it, go down sort of one weekend before the Tuesday and put a mark on it.
Yeah, that's a good plan. Maybe we'll lure
You could
him out.
You could always take them out the night before, Lee, because
I
you
was going to say that.
low water in the evening before as well. So you could always do an evening run out there with him to go and identify it.
Yes, that's a good plan.
I don't think you want to drag old people out of bed for 7 o'clock in the morning.
He is key. I know, but you're right. I'm with you.
Heart attack risk goes up and everything. It's like leave him, take him out in the evening instead. It's much safer.
Yeah.
We could go there way before then as well and have a look.
Yes. As long as we've got him, as long as we've got his intel on a boat at a low tide, couldn't we? That's the key, is to try and improve what
It's nice for you then.
Brian's mark. So John, we'll try and do that. We'll try and get a better
Mark on
start
our-
for that.
Hasn't
What did
somebody
you
put
want to
Mark
do?
on our rib?
Sorry, Pauline.
Hasn't somebody put you know, like a man overboard mark on the rib on the point? I think John did, didn't he?
No, we called it Brian's mark, and what it was basically when we had a half low tide where he could see a couple of rocks above the surface. Brian positioned the rib, and then we took a GPS point off that, which isn't bad, but I reckon we'd get it better if we had a lower tide and a bit more time.
Yeah, well, but
There's a few weeks to go before that.
I've got side scan on the rib and on Endeavour now, so
Yeah, that'd be cool.
even in the weeks before, I might just pass over the place a few times and map it out.
Fab. And we'll work then on trying to get Brian on a boat and at a low tide again and try and pinpoint it a bit more accurately.
So that could be done any time in the next couple of weeks, really, with Brian.
Yeah, we'll aim to do that. Okay, other questions for John. I'm conscious we didn't want to keep him beyond an hour on this, so don't be shy. No questions.
Where's the slack window with these spring tides? Is it going to be an hour, or is it? You said it was fairly generous on the slack.
There'll be plenty of time.
You should have 2 or 3 hours
Oh yeah, okay, I'll fine.
for that one. The citrine's diveable any time anyway, so that doesn't matter what the tides are doing. The Thracian is, as long as you avoid the surface current, which you'll get a little bit of. It's not even really mid-tide, to be fair. But yeah, you don't get anything much past sort of 10 meters down anyway. So actually on the wreck, you don't get very much tide at all.
Yeah. So does everyone have like video lights, cameras, video cameras, all that kind of stuff, or what's the general? Because I've got a bunch of GoPros and some video lights. I'll bring everything, but what people had.
Special offer on video lights.
Yeah, you've got some Gucci video lights now, seeing them. So does it matter? Do we all have to be shooting on the same type of format for video, John?
No. I mean, preferably yes, but it should work if we've got lots of different cameras. That should be fine.
Lara, you've got a GoPro, or we've got a Sea-Search
Yeah,
GoPro, haven't
we've
we?
got a Sea-Search GoPro with 2 video lights, so I'm going to bring that.
Cool. Okay, excellent.
I was just going to use my camera with a video light, just shooting video, whatever format you tell me to put it on.
Yep. Okay.
And I think Jim Selford couldn't come tonight because it's his karate class tonight, apparently. So, but Jim's probably, to be fair to Jim, I think he might be the only diver that I'm aware of on the Isle of Man that's actually done any photogrammetry yet. He did a bit last year, didn't he? Am I right, Michelle? He did, didn't he? He tried it.
Yeah, he's had a play around with it.
So he's really keen to come and join in for some of that week.
Great.
Oh, Andy Pegg as well, who couldn't join us tonight. He's another one that's got a camera. I'm sure Andy's got a video light. So there'll be I would guess there'll be 4, 5, 6 of us with cameras and video lights.
Who saved it?
Well, yeah, saved it.
Okay.
Maybe a couple more. M&H on the surface, I know, are coming with a camera to record what we're doing. So they're keen to get the story. Brian King's keen to come along. We'll you know, we'd fill a big boat or a couple of ribs, no problem.
So I think, you know, if weather permitting, I think my preference would be to do like an easy, just kind of try out the photogrammetry, get everyone used to the water, diving with cameras, that kind of stuff on Tuesday morning. And then if go to the racehorse single cameras in the afternoon, and just orientate ourselves on the site, figure out where we're going to survey and what we're going to do, and then the Wednesday try and do a bigger survey on it, and then kind of go from there. But I'm sort of aware I don't want to task load that first day too much. I mean, I'm quite happy to be thrown in the water with my gear at any sort of time. That's fine, but I do want to kind of upskill people, and I think the longer you have running cameras, we the models in the evening, we can look at results whilst I'm here. The sooner we start that process, I think the better.
Yeah, it would be really Gucci. The only one time I've ever done this somewhere else, and we did a Canon model, and I remember we all shot pictures on RAW, shoved them in a laptop, and then we literally left them for 2 hours, came back, and we'd got a 3D image of these cannons.
Yeah.
So I don't know how realistic it is, whether you have a laptop that we could even process your own footage from Dive 1 on before we collate the lot and run them at the Wildlife Trust computers, or how powerful your laptop is. I'm just imagining that if we did, let's say we did the shallow citrine that we all know it's a safe shallow dive, we get in, weather allows us, you know, people spread along, someone does the bow bits, the stern bit, and we stitch it, and imagine then that over lunch it suddenly crunches and people go, wow, that's really cool, let's crack on. It would almost be a really, if we can get anything out of Dive 1 as a this is what we've achieved already. Is that feasible, John? Or overnight it would be for day 2?
I wouldn't try and do a big model and coordinate everyone doing it.
No, but even a little bit of it. If you imagine on the first dive that you yourself went and did the boiler of the citrine, and then you could load that up and then say, right, look, here's the boiler. And then we can stitch it, you know, with the rest of your footage so that at least people see it and almost quite a quick result.
Yeah, we definitely do that. I was thinking, you know, just people take, you know, an area that's, I don't know, 4 or 5 meters square. And that's the bit that they try and survey, ideally with something interesting in it. And they just take video footage of that, and we can process that. We can run it overnight. So an area about sort of that kind of size, I reckon would take maybe an hour and a half. So you've got to extract the images, do a bit of tinkering, and then run it through the software. But yeah, I reckon somewhere between an hour and 2 hours. So we can, and you can run things in parallel. So it does slow it down, but you can run like 5 models at once and just leave them running overnight. So yeah, we'll definitely do that, because I think, you know, there's no good just waving cameras around. You kind of want to see what the result is and learn from that. So you can actually see the camera track as well. So you can say, okay, the way you did this one, you were a bit too far away, like in your survey lanes. So you need to kind of get more overlap, or increase the field of view of your camera, or, you know, whatever it is. So yeah, we will definitely do that. And I think depending on how we get on, we might do that, you know, each day if people are sort of trying it, and we'll run the models, and then we'll have a look at them in the morning or in the evening if they're ready. Yeah.
Sounds good.
But yeah, so like I said before, you know, we tried to come up with a methodology last year for sea searchers. So, you know, basically people with no formal photogrammetry training, no, you know, nothing special. You just have your camera, the technique, say point of reference, and you just kind of move your camera around so you're capturing lots of footage of the seabed. In essence, that's what it is. Maybe give you another 2 minutes of a briefing beyond that. But that's, you know, really it's meant to be straightforward for sea searchers to do whilst they're doing their diving stuff. So that's I think where we would start, and then get everyone to have a look at the results and try and improve their skills. And I think once you get the hang of it, you'll be fine. And we'll give it a go on your computers as well. Then you can process people's models when they come in, when I'm not here. Yeah.
Great. Any other comments or questions? Tumbleweed. Well, that's just about 8 o'clock, which is perfect. John, thanks for making time this evening.
No problem at all.
There's a few of us, including me, are quite excited about what we might get from this, and a bit of a legacy. And M&H, I know Alison couldn't join us tonight, but they're really keen to link that into the exhibition. So
Great.
fingers crossed. Look
I
forward
mean,
to
you know, so
where
the
they
plan
go.
is fairly freeform, and I'll bring the kind of surveying gear I usually bring. But if anyone has in the interim has any ideas, like for example, if you want a GPS reference for the model that we built in water, we'll need to put a sinker in and a ground control point with a buoy on it with the GPS in, that kind of stuff. If that's the, you know, if something occurs to you like that, then do give me a shout and we can figure out a way of doing it before I come. You know, I'll bring kind of buoys and markers and all that kind of stuff.
So, go on. I'm going to go overrun now. How does the GPS bit work? Because I think that for the racehorse site would be really useful, so that anytime anyone goes back to map more of that site, you know, we've got an exact point of where, as a reference point of where we go. So
John's got that set up
How's
where
it?
he cuts an SMB with a GPS on the top.
Yeah, we've got it for the Thracian. We've mapped the entire outline of the Thracian and the citrine actually with GPS.
Excellent, excellent. So to tie that to the model, you need to have something in the model, you know, the GPS reference for. So you know, the bowsprit, the boiler, whatever. So long as you know the GPS for that, and you need to obviously have that position marked from the surface. So it's not 100% accurate, but it's good enough. It's good enough to locate the thing. So there are other methods to get it more accurate, but we don't need to do these things. I don't. But yeah, I agree. I think it'd be really good to get some GPS references for the models for the racehorse, because if there was more significant archaeological stuff, I think it would be very useful for them to be able to map distances and that kind of stuff. Yeah, just to mention that if there's anything that, you know, crosses minds, do let me know and we can have a think about that before I come.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, John. We'll look forward to welcoming you to the Isle of Man.
Brilliant. Looking forward to it. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. I'm just looking around. I think you're all in. Adrian, we have a WhatsApp group for incoming. If you'd like to be in it, if you put your cell phone number in the chat now, I'll add you to the WhatsApp group if you're interested.
Right, yeah.
Everyone else is in it, so I'll do that. I'll stop recording now, and then I'll load this up for others.